We are going to be solving equations using the 5-step process. Step 1 is distributive property. Step 2 is combine like terms. Step 3 is to move the variable to one side of the equal sign. Step 4 is move the constant to the opposite side of the variable. Step 5 is to isolate the variable. The first step is distributive property. 1/2 times 4 equals 2, and 1/2 times 8 equals 4. Then you would write the rest of the problem. The next step is combine like terms. So you would box the variables and circle the constants. Once you would do that, you would go onward. 4 plus 2 equals 6. Then you would write the rest of the problem because you can't combine like terms on the next side. Next, you would move the variable. You would do the opposite of plus x and subtract x. You would do it on both sides so it's even. That would cancel out and get 6 equals 3x minus 3. Now you would move the constant and do the opposite. So you would add 3 to each side and you would get 9 equals 3x. Now you would isolate the variable. You would divide each side by 3. That would cross cancel and your answer would be x equals 3. First step is distributive property. 3 times 2 is 6 and 3 times 8 is 24. And you would write the rest of the problem. The next step is to combine like terms. So you would circle the constants and box the variables. Because there is only one variable on the left side, you would leave it alone. But 2 minus 4 is negative 2. From there, you would go on to the next side. 6 plus 24 equals 30 plus x. The next step is I would move the variable. So I would subtract x to the opposite of addition and subtract x from each side. I would get 2x minus 2 equals 30. The next step is to move the constant. So I would do the opposite and add 2 on each side. From there, I would get 2x equals 32. The next step is to isolate the variable. So to get the x alone. To get x alone, you divide by 2. Cross cancels, and that would get you x equals 16 because 32 divided by 2 is 16. So this one's a little bit different. If you can divide both sides by the same number, go ahead and do it. So what you do is find the greatest common factor, which is 8 on both. So now you divide from there. That crosses out, so that would just be 5x minus 2 equals 2. From there, you can't move the variable because there's only one variable and there isn't another on the other side. But you can move the constant, so you would do the opposite and add 2 on each side. So 5x equals 4. Next, you isolate the variable. You divide each side by 5 and that crosses out. You would get x equals 4/5 and you would keep it as a fraction in simplest form. This one's a little bit different. You have to make both of the fractions into whole numbers. So the way you can do that is multiply them both by 6. So 1/3 times 6 equals 6/3, and that equals 2. So that'd be 2 times 5 plus x is greater than 1/6 times 6 equals 1. 1 times 7 plus 4x. next step is distributive property. So 2 times 5 is 10, plus 2 times x is 2x, is greater than 7 plus 4x, because 1 times anything is that number. The next step after that is to combine like terms, which means circle the constants and box the variables. Because there was only one constant on each side and one variable on each side, that step isn't necessary, so we can cross that off. The next step is to move variable. So I'm going to subtract 2 from each side to x. That would give me 10 is greater than 7 plus 2x. The next step is to move the constant. So because 7 is a positive number, I'm going to subtract 7 to do the opposite. And I'm going to do that on each side. And that will get me 3 is greater than 2x. From there, you need to isolate the variable. So which means divide by that number. That crosses out, and your answer would be 3 over 2 is greater than x. What is meant by an unknown number? An unknown number is a number we don't know. We use a variable to represent that. What is the language of algebra? Algebra uses symbols. How can relationships be expressed algebraically? They use numbers, symbols, and variables. You can change a real-life situation into an equation. It can help you figure out the missing piece, variable. Is it possible to oversimplify? I think it's not possible to oversimplify unless the people tell you not to. What does simplification cost in terms of accuracy? When you simplify and solve, you have to follow an order that works every time. If you do it right, you should get it right.